The soaring cost of electricity is becoming an urgent financial strain for countless households across the United States, rising at more than double the pace of general inflation. This alarming trend is turning what used to be a basic utility into a significant economic burden for families everywhere. But here's where it gets controversial. Who is really responsible for this surge? And what does it mean for the future of energy in America? In August alone, electricity prices climbed by 6.2% compared to the previous year, and over the last 4 years they have surged by more than 30%, according to the Consumer Price Index. This steep increase is not just a number, it's a real hardship for many families struggling to keep up with their monthly bills. Politically, it's also a hot potato, presenting a tough challenge for the current administration. Energy Secretary Chris Wright, speaking recently, openly admitted that rising electric bills are his biggest worry. He pointed fingers at the Biden administration, claiming that numerous crazy projects were underway that contributed to the problem. However, experts caution that the situation is far more complex than a simple blame game. One major factor is the nation's aging electrical infrastructure, much of which dates back to the 1960s and 1970s. This outdated grid desperately needs replacement and modernization to keep up with today's demands. At the same time, new pressures are mounting from rapidly growing electricity consumption driven by AI-powered data centers and advanced manufacturing technologies, which are pushing demand to unprecedented levels. Ed Heers, an energy fellow at the University of Houston, highlights that the infrastructure has been neglected for decades, especially in regions frequently battered by storms and extreme weather events. This neglect has left the grid vulnerable and in dire need of upgrades. As of early September, at least 102 gas and electric utilities across the country have either implemented or proposed rate hikes set to take effect in 2025 or 2026. This information comes from an analysis by the Center for American Progress, a liberal think tank. More than half of these increases are justified by utilities as necessary to fund critical infrastructure improvements. In states like Florida and California, utilities are also grappling with the costly aftermath of extreme weather disasters and wildfires, which further strain the system. Beyond infrastructure woes, rising natural gas prices are a significant driver of higher electricity costs. Natural gas remains the largest fuel source for the US power grid, and its prices have been pushed upward by strong export demand that outpaces domestic production, according to the US Energy Information Administration, EIA. The EIA projects that electricity prices will continue to rise faster than inflation through 2026, adding to the financial pressure on consumers. Understanding the scale of the challenge requires a look at the US electricity grid itself, a vast network of thousands of miles of high-voltage transmission lines and millions of miles of lower-voltage distribution lines, connecting power plants to hundreds of millions of customers nationwide. Yet, about 70% of these transmission lines are over 25 years old and nearing the end of their expected lifespan, according to the Department of Energy. Senator Mike Lee, chairman of the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee, likened the grid to a two-way highway built decades ago, now expected to handle non-stop rush-hour traffic every day. Without upgrades, this outdated system simply cannot keep up with modern demands. In response, utility companies have poured hundreds of billions of dollars into capital investments in recent years. In 2024 alone, investor-owned electric utilities invested a record $178 billion to make the grid smarter, stronger, cleaner, and more secure, according to the Edison Electric Institute, an industry trade group. However, these modernization efforts face new hurdles. Rob Gramlich, president of Grid Strategies, a power sector consulting firm, warns that the Trump administration's trade policies, specifically tariffs on aluminum, steel, And imported equipment like transformers are driving up costs. Transformers, essential components of the grid, have become particularly expensive due to high demand and supply shortages. Currently, imports make up about 80% of the US power transformer supply and 50% of distribution transformers, according to Wood Mackenzie, a research firm. With tariffs in place, prices and wait times for these critical parts are expected to climb even further. Meanwhile, the rise of artificial intelligence is reshaping energy consumption in ways few anticipated. AI requires massive computing power, which translates into enormous electricity use. In 2023, data centers accounted for roughly 4% of total US electricity consumption. But this figure could triple to 12% by 2028, according to the Department of Energy. To put this in perspective, by 2030, the US economy may use more electricity for data processing than for manufacturing all energy-intensive goods combined, such as aluminum, steel, cement, and chemicals, according to the International Energy Agency. Major tech companies are investing heavily in AI infrastructure. Apple plans to spend $500 billion in the US over the next 4 years, much of it on data centers, while the Stargate initiative, a partnership involving OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank, also aims to invest $500 billion in AI infrastructure. But what does this mean for your electric bill? A recent study by Carnegie Mellon University and North Carolina State University warns that the surge in electricity demand from data centers could cause household electricity bills to rise dramatically by about 8% nationwide by 2030 and up to 25% in some regions. Adding fuel to the fire, former President Trump has pledged to unleash American energy by boosting fossil fuel production and rolling back renewable energy projects, which he has controversially labeled the scam of the century. He has declared on social media that wind and solar projects, which he claims harm farmers and the environment, will no longer be approved. This stance raises a critical question. Could halting renewable energy development worsen the supply shortage at a time when the country needs more clean energy capacity? According to the EIA, new solar projects represent more than half of the new generating capacity expected to come online this year. And renewables overall account for about a quarter of US electricity generation. Rob Gramlich warns that denying permits for new energy projects, as the Department of Interior has been doing, only deepens the supply crunch and drives prices higher. This sparks a heated debate. Should the US keep increasing production capacity or dust? Prioritize fossil fuel expansion to meet immediate demand, or invest aggressively in renewables to build a sustainable future? What do you think? Is the blame for rising electricity costs misplaced? Could trade policies and political decisions be making the problem worse? And how should the US balance the urgent need for reliable power with the push for cleaner energy? Share your thoughts and join the conversation below.